Grüezi miteinander, ganz herzlich willkommen und einen wunderschönen guten Tag, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde aus nah und fern. Ich begrüße Sie zu einer weiteren Folge von Weltwoche Daily, die andere Sicht, unabhängig, kritisch, gut gelaunt. Eine Sondersendung aus Budapest und wir finden uns hier in den prächtigen Räumlichkeiten des Außenministeriums der Republik Ungarn und mir gegenüber sitzt der ungarische Außenminister Péter Szijjártó, der ja vor nicht allzu langer Zeit Weltschlagzeilen machte, auch natürlich auf dieser Friedensmission von Ministerpräsident Viktor Orbán, wo ich die Ehre hatte, dabei zu sein als Schweizer Beobachter gewissermaßen am Rande oder vielleicht auch mittendrin im Weltgeschehen. Ich werde gleich auf Englisch wechseln. Wir unterhalten uns natürlich in der englischen Sprache, weil mein Ungarisch ist leider nicht wettbewerbsfähig und Schweizerdeutsch konnten wir jetzt auch noch nicht praktizieren hier mit dem Außenminister. Well, Foreign Minister Szijjártó, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Welcome to our program.
Thank you so much for your kind invitation.
Busy times, busy times. Let's start with this peace mission of Prime Minister Orbán. After 2 weeks, in retrospect, what's the essence?
Well, yesterday we had the meeting of the foreign ministers in Brussels, and there I understood that there is a huge portion of frustration all over Europe caused by this peace mission. And I think that the reason for this frustration is, on one hand, European politicians being jealous at the Prime Minister, since it became very obvious that our Prime Minister is the last and only one in Europe currently who can reach out to such important players of global politics and global security, such as President Trump, President Putin, President Xi Jinping, and President Erdogan in the meantime. On the other hand, I think that the European politicians are getting frustrated because they have a fear. They have a fear that it will become absolutely obvious to everyone in Europe that they have carried out not only a bad and unsuccessful strategy when it comes to this war, but a strategy which has caused tremendous harm to Europe and to the European people. And the more we speak about it, the more spectacular we represent this peace mission position, the more obvious it becomes that the last 2.5 years have totally failed from the strategy perspective of the European Union. They try to hide this situation, but now it becomes more and more complicated for them.
The plan of Prime Minister Orbán and yourself was, in a way, very European-like. I mean, your mission actually was also dedicated to bring back the European Union as a diplomatic player, not just leave the whole ordeal to the United States. I mean, how did your colleagues in the EU react to this endeavor that you want to bring them back on the diplomatic level here? Were they totally deaf to your plans?
Absolutely. They made it very clear that Hungary had no right to represent the European Union on these negotiations. I asked them whether they can give me a quotation from Prime Minister Orbán where he would have started a sentence with, on behalf of the European Union, representing the European Union, as presidency of the European Union. Obviously, we are totally aware that the rotating presidency has nothing to do with, foreign representation of the European Union. That's why you have never seen any European Union flags behind the Prime Minister, except for Kiev, but there the Ukrainians have put it there, so that was not our decision. We have made it very clear that the Prime Minister has made it in his own capacity. That was the only way he could do it, I'm telling you once again, because European Union currently is not being looked at as an important player in global politics, but the Prime Minister himself being in this position for the longest time of Europe, having a very wide-ranging credibility in the world, being being respected for his vision and for his courage to speak about his vision openly. It was obvious that he was the only one who could make an attempt to make it clear that there are pro-peace voices in Europe as well. Because what's the problem here in Europe and let's say the transatlantic area? There's a big bubble created by the massive majority of the mainstream liberal media in Europe. This mainstream liberal media suggests as if the Euro-Atlantic position was or would be the leading position worldwide, which is definitely not true. If you have enough energy and braveness to look out of this Euro-Atlantic bubble, you see that the global majority respects the Hungarian position, sympathizes with the Hungarian position, and agrees with the Hungarian position.
And I would add, if you look at the readers of the newspapers who are condemning your mission, the readers are absolutely in favor. I mean, I think the so-called silent majority, or not so silent majority anymore, is on the side of Hungary.
Let me tell you a story which is there around me in the last years during these debates. I've been minister for 10 years now. I'm the longest serving in the European Union. And I'm having a very clear experience. Whenever there's a tough issue on the agenda on the Foreign Affairs Council, before and after the meeting, some of the colleagues come there. You say, Peter, you will be tough, right? You're gonna fight hard and you're gonna veto, right? Because you know this would be really great. And I said, yeah, of course I'm gonna do that. You know me. This is our national position. But if you could help, would be great. So no, you know, I can't say this openly because of media, because of NGOs, because of coalition partners. Or after the meeting, you know, on the strategic place where you usually go after a long meeting, colleagues come there and say, hey, you were really great. Who said totally different, you know, on the meeting. Or, like during the meeting, receiving SMS from the colleagues, thumbs up, you're doing great. So, you know...
But is this the case now also with this peace mission?
Yeah, okay. See, yesterday, you know, yesterday, there was a huge storm on me, except for Slovakia. There was a totally new phenomenon yesterday.
But behind the scenes, they come and say, we're happy that you do it, please continue.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
But this is a good sign. I mean, this would be a sign that there is some kind of perestroika in Brussels.
Yeah, but nice, but I mean tragic in the meantime, because, you know, it means that representatives of elected governments are not brave enough to say what they think would be good, you know? Why? Because of big pressure of liberal mainstream media, politics, NGOs, Washington, whatever. Yesterday, though, there was a totally new dimension. First time ever, I was not alone in a debate. On the spot, because the Slovak deputy foreign minister was so clear-cut, so honest, so open, you know, not like either or let's put... Very straightforward, saying that they totally agree with the Hungarian peace mission, they have nothing against, they have no criticism, and they reject every kind of criticism towards the Hungarian peace mission.
So you're saying there is actually behind the hostility, I mean, they have threatened to sanction or to boycott the meetings of Hungary. This is a bit the official hostile reaction, but behind the scenes you would say things are changing. There is a change of attitude that in Europe the heads of state are getting ready to probably embark on diplomacy again.
I don't know this, but what I know is that some of the foreign ministers say that this would be the right direction. I tell you what, yesterday, you know, Josep Borrell, who is one of the most pro-war politicians of Europe, the European Biden, may I say. The European Biden was one of the craziest, you know, why we have done this peace mission. And he, I think, spent a lot of time in the recent weeks to find out some revenge, you know, somehow. And he found a very childish...
The empire strikes back.
Yeah, some very childish solution, not to organize the informal meeting of the foreign and defense ministers in Budapest, but to organize it in Brussels. Who cares? I mean, you know, they lose a lot, because I would have hosted them in the National Football Stadium, which is a much better place than the one where we meet in Brussels. But I mean, if they want to do it in Brussels, let's do it in Brussels. I don't care. But what happened was that 13 ministers argued in favor of having the meeting in Budapest. Among them, the representatives of the biggest countries. Of course, not based on the sympathy to Hungary, on different reasons, but 13 argued in favor of Budapest. 5 argued against and said that they would not come if the meeting takes place in Budapest. 8 said that they leave it to the High Representative. So the High Representative said, okay, then Brussels. So, that was very childish, like in the kindergarten, that I have your sand shovel, you took it from me, come on. So, that shows, with such a high representative, what do we expect? Why would Europe be respected in the world, if they see that the so-called chief of European diplomacy, if there's any European diplomacy, by the way. So the high representative is on that level, of intellectuality. So then why they would respect Europe?
Yeah. But so if I understand you correctly, there is a certain degree of hope that you notice that some attitudes, probably it's not the mainstream attitude in Brussels, but some positions are probably shifting. Let's talk about...
and sorry, just one sentence. Sorry to interrupt,
sure.
But I think this is being reflected in the fact that the parliamentary group of the Patriots became the third largest within a moment in the European Parliament. That's another good sign.
Which is an initiative of Hungary.
Hungary, Czech Republic and Austria. Right?
So Hungary is some kind of unofficial leader of the European Union at the moment, but we don't tell anybody because
keep it in secret,
have countermeasures.
Keep it in secret. Or else we'll make another decision.
Let's go back to this really historical mission that you and your Prime Minister did. I could be part of some elements of this trip, but what is probably your most important learning? What have you taken away from all these high-level meetings with President Putin, with Erdogan, with Donald Trump, with Xi Jinping? What's for you the essence of these actual deliberations and talks?
Well, what I see now is the following. That since the Russians are gaining ground day by day, for them it's absolutely not urgent to come to any kind of solution. Because with every day they win. Now I say this, of course, Western European colleagues will say that, this is Russian propaganda. No, this is the fact. This is the fact, and they know it as well. The Ukrainians are, arguing for more and more support. Now they still get it because the Democrat administration is in place. So if I look at the two parties at war, well, actually, we cannot expect any of the two to come up with a proposal to solve it, not on the battlefield, So it means that the impact has to come from the outside. And you have three actors here, the United States, China, and still Europe. But currently, Europe is being behind the US because Europe has been copying the American strategy, is being kind of an assistant to the United States in this regard with no real own voice. So China is in favor of peace. They have made initiatives already. My esteemed colleague, Minister Wang Yi, together with the Brazilian colleague, they put down on the table a proposal which I think would make sense to be debated. The current US administration is pro-war, obviously. If there's a change there, then at least two of the three big powers will be in favor of peace. And that will, I think, totally shift the landscape.
And you think it will make a huge difference when there is a change in Washington?
It's going to be a game changer. That's going to be a game changer.
Yeah. And you think that the European Union will be standing on the sideline?
What I feel is the following, that another reason for the frustration I have told you about at the beginning is that most of the European leaders have a fear, you better laugh than cry on it, a really huge fear of President Trump being elected again. Because, most of them have made statements of humiliation about him on many occasions, saying very bad words on him. And I think they understand that internet doesn't forget anything, and I'm not quite sure that President Trump, would forget anything. So for them now, it can be really uncomfortable, and I think they are frustrated of the fact that President Trump might come back. If President Trump comes back, then it's going to change the landscape around Europe as well. And then it will be even more obvious for the European people that the strategy Europe has followed in the last years is a total failure.
Prime Minister Orbán has told me that it would be a great idea if President Zelensky would launch an initiative in order a bit to bring the Europeans back in the game, that he would probably reflect that if the Americans take charge directly with the Russians, that his position might be weakened. What do you observe there? Is President Zelensky, who seemed to me, after the meeting of the Hungarians in Kiev, he was coming up with the idea saying we have to have a new process, Russia has to be part of it. Is there changing anything in Kiev, or what do you see there?
Well, I hope that the phone conversation between President Zelensky and President Trump was educative enough from this perspective, and I hope that it will have a good consequence, and I hope that that will bring us closer to the peaceful resolution of the war. You know, President Trump will bring a totally new impetus in this regard, and if Ukraine is not getting the similar kind of impacts or impulse from Washington than now, then it will really change the whole environment.
You have talked also to the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. You have been in Beijing. I mean, we're living now in propagandistic times. I mean, media tell us, also American media tell us, we are in this kind of Cold War against the autocracies, against Russia, against China. It's a climate which is not very good for diplomacy, actually. It's like a bit the crusade climate. Can you, from your experience, can you tell us a bit your observations? How is it when you talk to the Chinese leaders? What kind of atmosphere is there?
It is refreshing from the perspective that when you talk to the Chinese leaders, you feel the platform created by mutual respect. This is what currently missing from the Western political landscape. So here, when you talk, you don't feel the respect. You are judged, stigmatized, lectured. So if you are not ready to say what the mainstream demands from you to say, you are immediately stigmatized. No platform, no space for realistic, rationalistic, common sense-based dialogue. When you talk to the Chinese, you have this feeling of mutual respect. You give respect, they reciprocate the respect. So therefore, I hope that after a while, the Western political landscape can regain this basis of mutual respect as well, because I think that will be very, very helpful.
What's wrong with the West? I mean, Hungary is a country dedicated, that's important in your political work. Values, you know, traditional values, values who have proven their worth. But you described it. We're living in a world of mindless moralism, of patronizing small countries. Governments in Europe tell the whole world what they got to do. What's wrong with the West? Where's the root cause of this strange behavior?
I think the liberal mainstream is the most aggressive, or one of the most aggressive, and one of the most dictatorial political ideologies I ever learned about. Because liberal,
late communism included.
Well, yeah. I mean, the liberal mainstream is absolutely intolerant. Liberal mainstream believes in hegemony instead of colorfulness. So liberal mainstream considers everybody and everything out of the liberal mainstream as bad, as retrograde, as something which should be denied, something that should be stigmatized, something that has no credibility. Okay, so there's no tolerance, while they always, refer to tolerance as a huge value of them, but they have no tolerance towards anybody and anything who or what would think something differently. I think that's the major problem. And the liberal mainstream is an internationalist, is a cosmopolitan one. It doesn't tolerate the nations, it doesn't tolerate patriotism, it doesn't tolerate anything which is linked to to the roots and to the anchors of the nations, like religion, like culture, like history, like heritage.
Family.
I think the family, yeah, sure. So I think this is the biggest problem.
Yeah. Is there, my observation is there's probably a paradigm change there, that we're seeing the end a bit of this era of dogmatic liberalism. You see in the United States already, I was surprised that after this murderous attack on former President Trump, that somehow the media shifted. Even those newspapers who vilified Trump as this arch devil in Washington, they seem... Sometimes he has become a hero. I mean, for many people who criticized him before, is this so-called liberal dogmatism thing already of the past? Is it disappearing on the stage? What would you say?
Well, I would say two things. First, the pendulum. Once it goes to one of the extremes, it can come very, very easily to the other extreme. This is number one. Number two, that many of these people who are now on the side of the liberal mainstream have no moral, have no attachment to to moral things. So they adjust easily. So if now it is becoming more and more, let's say, I don't say obvious, because when it comes to elections, obvious only comes out. So it's more and more likely that President Trump has a great chance to win the presidential. Of course, some of them started already the adjustment phase, let's put it this way, to the future. And we have to be aware of this phenomenon.
Let's go back to finish our discussion. Let's go back again to your peace mission. I mean, the media coverage has been rather single-minded, one could say, or it's not the right word, but more or less the same opinion everywhere. Well, it was a failure, nothing was achieved. I mean, Viktor Orbán was just fulfilling his kind of ego project, on the world stage. How would you counter these perceptions? What would you say is, according to you, the success of this peace mission? Where do you see tangible effects?
I think that the most important achievement here is that the channels of communication are open. We consider it as a definition during peaceful period of time. But when it comes to such a period like now, when we are living in the age of dangers, keeping channels of communication open is becoming much more important than ever before. Because if you have the channels of communication stuck, then you lose the hope for peace. Because the channels of communication provide you with the alternative to the battlefield solution, which doesn't exist, by the way. So in order to avoid the battlefield tragedy to be continued, you need the alternative route, which is through communication and dialogue. And with this peace mission, we have shown it very clearly that yes, it is possible to keep the lines open, and we should take advantage of that. That's why the Prime Minister has proposed a debate about whether Europe should reopen the channels of communication with Russia.
When you look at all the factors, military factors, diplomatic factors, political factors, I mean, we are in a totally shifting environment. How far away is a ceasefire in Ukraine? Because we have to keep in mind, every day, hundreds, sometimes even thousands are dying, young people. There is collateral damage, terrible word, for incidents like we witnessed recently. How far away are we from such a ceasefire?
I would say around 105 days.
Okay.
If I calculate properly, 3.5 months.
Okay. Could we have the minutes? Could we have it to the minute? No, it's okay.
3.5 months.
But
if I count correctly, until beginning of November, right?
Yeah. So August, you sound rather, I mean, this is a rather optimistic perspective, one could say. You see an end, you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, and the light at the end of the tunnel is called Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I would like to add from a neutral Swiss perspective that Hungary played its part as well in this very important political field. Dear Foreign Minister Szijjártó, many thanks for this conversation.
Vielen Dank für die Möglichkeit.